the potential cost of the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. You're listening to The Wrap from Central Florida Public Media. I'm Brendan Byrne. It's that time of year again. The 2024 Atlantic hurricane season begins June 1st. The National Hurricane Center is forecasting up to 25 named storms, of which more than 4 will be major hurricanes of Category 3 or above. Along with the start of hurricane season comes a tax holiday for storm supplies, which will spur the local economy. But with storm season comes the potential for economic damage.
But I would say probably the top of the list that I've seen is your flood risk. It just takes 1 inch of flooding to cause $25,000 worth of damage.
The economics of hurricane season, that's ahead on The Wrap, the big stories this week from Central Florida Public Media. But first, these headlines. Florida Republicans quickly attacked the conviction of former President Donald Trump on 34 counts of falsifying business records, while Democrats said the verdict showed nobody is above the law. The News Service of Florida reports Republican U.S. Senator Rick Scott called the verdict a, quote, political witch hunt. Governor Ron DeSantis has been raising money for Trump's presidential campaign after unsuccessfully seeking the Republican nomination. He issued a statement that called the charges against Trump, quote, alleged misdemeanor business records violations from nearly a decade ago. He said the case wouldn't have moved forward if Trump wasn't the defendant. Democratic U.S. Representative Frederica Wilson said the verdict shows, quote, our justice system at work. Trump is scheduled to be sentenced on July 11th. For the next 6 months, Orange County staff won't accept new development applications for projects that would require changes to current county maps or plans in order to be approved. As Central Florida Public Media's environment reporter Molly Durig reports, the new zoning in progress ordinance won't impact existing development applications that were submitted before Tuesday.
County staff say they need time to process those existing development applications before September. That's when Orange County hopes to adopt its Vision 2050 plan, a big picture overhaul of the current comprehensive plan to help shape the county's growth over the next 30 years. Addressing commissioners during a public comment period last week, Christopher Cameron said the new ordinance complicates his plans to develop 30 properties he just acquired into hospice and residential assisted living facilities.
Well, it's going to impact the community. A lot of people are going to be without jobs, not going to be able to get this rezoned on time. I agree with it. Everything he has is a valid point, but the timing is horrible.
County staff say the new ordinance automatically expires in 6 months unless commissioners repeal it before then. Molly Durig, Central Florida Public Media.
The program of all-inclusive care for the elderly, also known as PACE, has come to Central Florida. As Central Florida Public Media's Joe Burns reports, the InnovAge PACE Center will provide older people who are dual enrolled in Medicare and Medicaid with coordinated comprehensive health care and more.
New PACE centers are opening around Florida, including InnovAge's center in Tampa and now this one on South Orange Blossom Trail. It'll have the full range of Medicaid and Medicare services at home and in the center for seniors who otherwise might need to go to a nursing home. Participants can come from Orange, Osceola, Lake, and Seminole counties, anywhere within an hour's drive for the center's buses. President and CEO Patrick Blair says it's begun to enroll participants, but the process can take 45 to 75 days. The center has room for 1,300.
I hope it becomes a community hub for seniors who are struggling with their independence and their families are struggling with helping them maintain their independence. A place where people can come that feel a sense of belonging and a sense of support throughout the remainder of their lives.
Andy Gardner with Orlando Health says the center addresses a need identified in their community assessment.
At the top of the list is access to care. A lot of people think that's a hospital setting, but it's not. It's access to care outside of a hospital setting.
InnovAge is seeking to raise awareness about what Blair calls the best-kept secret in healthcare. Joe Burns, Central Florida Public Media.
These stories and more on our website. Visit cfpublic.org. The team of journalists at Central Florida Public Media have published a new series, Central Florida Seen and Heard Rising Water, which explores the impacts of climate change and flooding. Our reporters uncovered outdated flood maps and that historical data used to make decisions about flood protections may be irrelevant. We also explore how development may affect flooding and more. Listen to Central Florida Seen and Heard Rising Water, where you get this podcast, or visit cfpublic.org. It's that time of year again. Hurricane season begins June 1st, and it's expected to be hyperactive with up to 25 named storms, at least 4 of which are likely to become major hurricanes. Central Florida Public Media's Talia Blake spoke with Mike Gunter, a political science professor at Rollins College, to find out how the increased activity this hurricane season may storm our wallets and the economy.
So this year is expected to be a very active hurricane season due to warm Atlantic Ocean temperatures. How could that impact tourism and our economy this summer?
The immediate impact would obviously be to keep tourists away. Although what's interesting is it would have an economic impact of more spending here locally as well. I think the long-term impact is more negative than it is positive, but unfortunately, in terms of economic measures, that doesn't always show up right away, because if you think back decades ago with the Exxon Valdez oil spill, every possible measure that was a negative, but all the spending and the cleanup made it look on paper superficially like an economic positive. So we certainly have had over the years versions of that when it comes to hurricanes in Florida.
Has there been any city in Florida that you've seen as an example that has kind of done this really well, where they were hit by a hurricane and then the next hurricane season they kind of put things in place where they were able to withstand that storm a bit better?
I'll tap right into one here where my college is located in Winter Park. There were a string of storms, I believe 2004, with Hurricane Charlie being the most famous of them for us. There were sections of the town that were without power for a week or more. And the response was to invest heavily, and I do mean heavily. It's expensive. That's why you haven't seen other cities do this to the same extent, but to invest heavily in undergrounding the electrical wiring, and that makes it more resilient, certainly. And the powder outages over the last 20 years now have not been as extensive because of that.
Hurricane season officially starts on Saturday, June 1st. Given that some people and businesses may still be dealing with issues from last hurricane season, what can they do now to ensure they make it out of this one in good economic standing?
There's some sort of resilience building things that you can do for your own property, preparing for the inevitable rains that will come, whether that's putting a French drain in your yard to help drain the water so it's not pooling near a doorway or something like that, to looking into ways to, have some kind of backup power system or help improve with insulation so that, your house isn't overheating within a couple hours of losing the air conditioning. There are things that you can do that help retain that coolness longer. So there are a lot of different things, but I would say probably the top of the list that I've seen is your flood risk. It just takes 1 inch of flooding to cause $25,000 worth of damage.
Mike Gunter, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
That was Rollins College's Mike Gunter speaking with Central Florida Public Media's Talia Blake. That's it for The Wrap this week. This podcast is produced by Central Florida Public Media with assistance from News Director LaToya Dennis and Digital Director Ryan Ellison. I'm Brendan Byrne. This is The Wrap.